and welcome to the latest episode of Southside Stories, the podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, founders, particularly in London. And usual reminder, if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing that and hitting the notification bell. Today, we have a really fascinating subject, which is around the world of immersive media. And we're going to talk about what that exactly means in a second. But with me is Jay. Hello, Jay.
Hi.
Great to have you on board. Let's get into it. I think we'll just get straight into it, Jay. So tell us a little bit about you, Jay, where you're based, and just give us maybe the top line on the company, because we're going to elaborate on this a lot more, but let's get going with that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having me. I'm based, as you can see, in the virtual void, but in the real world in London, where we started. I live in Brixton, South London. But we, as a team, operate mostly virtually. We definitely walk the talk. So we're all about doing things virtually, and working is one of those things.
Awesome. And obviously, you've quite a technology sort of focused business. Have you always been interested in technology? What was the sort of career path that led you to where you are right now?
Yeah, very much. So career-wise, I actually studied psychology back in the day. I come from a family of clinical psychologists who felt that when I went into marketing as my career, that I was operating in the black arts of psychology, which didn't go down very well. But yeah, so I started in marketing and then moved into media. Worked for National Geographic for about 7 years, doing lots of traveling around the world and working with editorial teams. And that was a fantastic grounding in media production. So that's kind of where I started. But at some point, the traveling had to end, and I came back to the UK, and that's really where Circus was born.
Awesome. Immersive media. Now, I'm reaching maybe a little bit here, but when I think about National Geographic, I think about those amazing photography and that world, even though it's, for a long time it's just in the print media, but it's that big world that the National Geographic shows. Did any of that factor into you going into your current line of work, or was that a bit of a red herring?
I think to a point, yeah. So I guess an appreciation for being able to be in the photo. So actually working with the magazine meant the chance to actually be there in the countries, inside what was then going to be a flat photograph. So I felt like I got to be behind the scenes. So the opportunity to use technology to enable other people to feel like they're inside the scene is quite exciting. And then the actual technical geekery of it as well appealed to me.
What made you sort of go from that to starting your own business? What does that look like? I mean, did you work in another agency before for a while, or did you go straight into starting your own thing? How does that look?
Yeah, so I had originally worked in an agency in London before I went off on this job with National Geographic. But then, yeah, coming back to the UK, so I met my wife abroad. She's also from the UK, and we moved back to be together. So yes, I needed something to do, and this was in 2010 when Google Maps, Google Street View was starting to move indoors. So they'd essentially mapped all of the roads in the developed world, and now wanted to allow users to step inside public spaces, museums, shops, restaurants, and so on. And we're trying to figure out how to do that at scale, how to actually get inside and photograph at good quality in this quite specialist way, a huge amount of ground to cover. And at the time, they were doing it through individual photographers and accrediting individual photographers to go out and sell this as a service. So I started a conversation with them to say, well, we could do this as an agency, as an intermediary, to manage a pool of photographers, sell centrally, and essentially go out into the world and sell this as a service. And you only have to have one point of contact. So we very rapidly became one of Google's top agencies in the UK, producing 360 photography as part of the Street View project. And that's really where it all started.
Yeah, great. Let's talk about the sort of wider industry just for a minute in terms of the world of immersive. Let's just start by getting on the same page, because there's quite a lot of words that fly around, aren't there? So there's VR, mixed reality, AR, immersive. Just help us there. What are some main delineations in your world?
Yeah. It is confusing. And thankfully, the terms are finally starting to settle. It's something we've wrestled with for many years about just communicating what we do to prospective clients. So you can think of immersive as the sort of catch-all umbrella term for this new generation of media. So for the longest time, brand content of all kinds, was delivered via flat rectangular screens, right? 16 by 9, 9 by 16 in the world of mobile, but essentially flat rectangles. And suddenly this new generation of media came along where you could be inside those visuals and you could have an experience that helps you feel more like you are somewhere else than where you are. So immersive is the catch-all for that media type. Virtual reality refers to a situation where you're usually wearing a headset and you are completely separated from your real world environment. So everything that you see is part of that virtual environment and you can't see anything of the world around you. Mixed reality essentially allows you to still see what's around you, but it's then overlaid with different types of content, usually 3D animations and objects and that sort of thing. When you're looking at that through a phone or a tablet on a flat device, that's called augmented reality. When you're looking at that through a VR headset, it's called mixed reality. That's basically it.
Great. And what's your assessment of where the industry is right now? Because it's sort of people get very excited for good reason around sort of some of the capabilities here. But it feels like it's been talked about for quite a long time, and it's certainly in the consumer segment. It seems to still be in that kind of gamer kind of area. How fair is that? What's your assessment in both the consumer and the business market of where immersive is right now?
Yeah. So from our perspective, immersive and its subset virtual reality has been through its Gartner hype cycle, right? So as each wave of this new technology, each new device comes out, there's this thrill of excitement. This is going to revolutionize the way that we do everything in our lives. Of course, it can't possibly live up to the hype. And so we have that chasm of disappointment, and then it claws its way back up to find its feet in our daily lives. A classic example of this is the metaverse. Zuckerberg announces a few years ago that suddenly the metaverse is going to be part of our lives. Everybody goes, no thanks, I don't want to spend a third of my day in a VR headset. And that sort of crashes and burns. However, through all of those various peaks of hype, what has emerged are some really killer apps, some fantastic use cases for the technology. And that's finally where we are now. So you're quite right on the consumer side, it's predominantly gaming. So yeah, VR is the perfect delivery mechanism for a gaming experience. You can be totally transported from your living room. It doesn't matter if you've got a small living room, big one, big budget, small budget, you can have an incredible, realistic experience if you're into gaming. So on the consumer side, that's the main one. But then in our world, we work mostly with brands who are trying to do something on the more sort of enterprise side. And that again has found its feet. So in things like brand experiences, activations, events, trade shows, but also learning and development, training. Again, VR is a perfect delivery mechanism for those kinds of content and to solve those kinds of problems, to do it at scale, to save money. And that's where the brands are now starting to invest. Similarly, outside of the wearable devices, you've got immersive installations. So it's always been possible to put people inside your media by doing things like projection mapping, but it required specialist venues. It was quite expensive. Nowadays, the cost of technology has come down. There are immersive venues in most major cities where you can host events, where you can place content without having to build it from scratch. And we've, as part of that, seen this explosion of supply and demand for immersive experiences, which can be as a group, which can be without any worn devices. You can walk into a room and you can have a theatrical experience. You can have an exhibition experience. It's amazing.
Yeah, actually, just as you're talking, you reminded me actually that I've been to two of those in the last year. I've been to I think it was called Moonwalkers, the Tom Hanks narrated one over in King's Cross, that big space there. And there was a Salvador Dali one over in Shoreditch Way as well. I've been to. Yeah, you're right. There's been a few of those. Thinking about sort of technology, hardware and software. What's that look like now? Have there been any big advances? Is there anything that is still limiting what you would like to do? What's the story there?
So the hardware is always evolving. The best one at the moment on the market is still the Quest 3 by Meta. That's the kind of gold standard at the moment. There are some enterprise solutions which are higher quality, but they're pretty expensive and rarely used. So Meta and Pico are the two VR hardware suppliers that pretty much dominate at the moment, and they're really good. I mean, they're certainly better than their previous generation of headsets. Better fidelity, better sound, more comfortable, lighter weight, all of the things that you would want. There are rumors of a new wave of technology coming out, a new wave of devices from Android, Samsung, who are going to be releasing devices, but it's somewhat slow. And what you've got creeping up in the background in your rearview mirror is smart glasses. And you'll have seen the adverts for Ray-Ban and Meta, recently Oakley, and those are getting better every 6 months. Every year there's new releases, and those are sort of creeping up behind and will one day probably overtake. So I wonder whether VR is slightly putting on the brakes to allow smart glasses to catch up. But really, from our point of view, that doesn't matter because we're still creating content for experiences in the moment, right? For launches happening this year. So we can use whatever's the best technology available at the time, but we're always keeping an eye on what's coming.
Did the Apple Vision Pro, I mean, certainly in the US, that had quite a splash. It sort of was a lot more subdued, I think, in Europe. Has that had any positive impact on some of the other hardware manufacturers?
I mean, Apple is always interesting to watch, right? To see where they go and where they improve, and others will be learning from it. You know, as you will know, it's a hugely expensive device. They stopped making them after a relatively short run, and I think they knew that there was never going to be a mass adoption product. But what it was Apple showing that they're staying in the conversation when it comes to this phrase spatial computing. So the idea that, again, your computer doesn't have to be a rectangle sat in front of you. It can be worn on your face. And then that opens up the borders, the frame of that experience to be more expansive and more interesting and more immersive. So they kind of went down the direction of, rather than try to create a gaming solution, something that was more like wearing a computer on your head. And like the metaverse, that's not something people are willing to really do yet. But they will get better.
Just going back to the glasses, by the way, I've never worn or experimented with those. What's the latest capability that you could do with, say, the Meta Ray-Bans? I think you can take photos, can't you?
Yeah. So at the moment, the kind of best case that you can go buy in the high street smart glasses will have things like front-facing cameras, so you can take photos, videos of your life. They'll have earpieces, either sort of usually bone conductivity or outside ear speakers, so that you can listen to music via Bluetooth from your phone, for example. And they're AI enabled, so you can talk to them and tell them to do things. So you can look at something and say, "Oh, what's that tree?" And it'll tell you in your ear what that tree is.
Right.
So you're not seeing it, it's not projecting anything to your eyes, but it is giving you an audio experience and allowing you to record.
Right.
That's what you can do at the moment. And they're fine.
Yeah.
But the next generation, the exciting one, which is not yet really good enough for the consumer launch, but there are solutions out there. So you've got like Xreal, you've got Vuzix, there's a few others out there. You can buy for 400 quid, let's say, where they have these sort of lenses inside the glasses, which will present an overlaid image to you. So you're looking out in the world, you're seeing the world, but you're seeing something overlaid on it. And that's either one eye or both eyes. That's where it gets really exciting as a piece of technology, particularly for us as visual content creators. But at the moment, the glasses are quite chunky. So as soon as someone can solve that and thin those out and get to a pair of glasses like you and I are wearing, that's when things get really interesting.
Yeah. Great. All right. That's a really good overview. Let's switch to Circus and, what you guys are up to. Let's maybe just talk a little bit about some of the clients that you work with and the problems you solve for them. What are a couple of good examples there?
So it's really varied. What I didn't say at the beginning, talking about us, is we see ourselves as a creative technologist. We're a production studio. So we make content depending on who asks us to make it. So we get inquiries through the door all the time from all kinds of directions, all kinds of industries, all kinds of wacky ideas. We never get a detailed 6-page brief. We usually get a 3-line email from someone saying, we've got this event coming up. We think we want to do something. Is this possible? And then we have a whole discovery process with them to figure out what it is they want to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. Jay, does that point to, because just the newness, people are interested, but they don't have a track record in doing it. And is that because there's a lot of kind of first time clients and uses of this?
Yeah, very, very much.
Yeah.
And if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, I'd be talking an awful lot about educating the market. We're having to really, from the ground up, explain what's possible, what technology exists, how much it costs, all of that stuff. We're doing a lot less of that now. It's really noticeable. So clients are coming with an awareness. They've usually tried a few things. They know some of the terminology, but you're quite right. Usually they've not necessarily engaged with it directly themselves, at least not having the in-house experience to produce something. So they're coming to us as a technical partner to say, is this possible? How do we do it?
So give us a flavour of a couple of great examples that you've seen, that you've been involved with, that you think really demonstrate the capability and some of the experiences that you're building for the brand.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try and give you a couple that give a bit of a range. So one that we did recently was we worked with London Zoo, who were doing a summer campaign to try and drive ticket sales, and they had a deal with the Outernet. So if you know the Outernet, but it's this incredible immersive building in Tottenham Court Road. So you walk in, it's open to the public.
That one. Yes.
Huge screens, biggest LED screens in Europe. And they wanted to put an experience in there. And their idea was to film underwater with the penguins. So that was a really interesting creative and technical challenge. And in particular, the Outernet at that point had not shown any real world 360 video because no one had produced it at high enough quality to present on those screens. So most of the things you see in the Outernet are 3D animations, right? So you create the environment, the objects, and you can let it render for days. You can have any resolution you like. As soon as you're shooting in the real world, you've got some physical limitations to how high resolution you can shoot. Anyway, so we ended up using a custom underwater 360 camera rig. We spent a couple of days testing, getting the penguins used to the equipment, being in the water with them, and then essentially created this very high resolution 360 video, which was then played at various points in the Outernet as a summer campaign for the zoo. And it's just so much fun to see families going in, big groups of people pointing and watching these giant whale-sized penguins swim past them out in the real world. So that was a huge amount of fun. And again, with my geek hat on, lots of fun for the crew to work on.
That sounds brilliant and fun. That sounds so great. Seeing all of the London Zoo behind the scenes and getting into the pools of the penguins and the technical challenge. Is it still running? Outernet, or have I missed it?
No, that's been and gone. That
is it? Yeah, would have loved to see that.
Might get repurposed. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So that's maybe a good example of something fun, consumer facing. On the other side, then something that's more virtual reality based and more on the solutions side rather than brand experience. We're working with a big global data center company at the moment to create a library of training scenarios. So for them, their engineers are out in the world. Very high stakes. If a data center goes down, that's a big problem for them and their clients. And these huge sites typically have a very small number of people, especially at night. You might have a security guard and engineer, and that's it. So if a fire breaks out or something goes wrong, you really need that engineer to know what they're doing in order to fix it quickly. So that was proving extremely expensive and time consuming to simulate in the real world, to go to sites, take them over, train people in groups, create these scenarios so that they could role play it. And there's a lot you just can't role play. You can't just turn the power off to test whether people react correctly. So they came to us, and we've been through a series of phases, but are now at a point where we're rolling out a whole library of different scenarios through a fleet of VR headsets that they can then train through any of their global offices, any number of engineers on any number of different scenarios that might occur, and centrally track their performance, how well they're doing, unlock more scenarios once they reach certain thresholds. And so it becomes this whole L&D solution for this company. And they've saved a huge amount of money by investing in that.
Yeah, I love that. It's very, very clear. Yeah, very clear use case. Something actually is very, very hard, as you say, to do without VR. Have you seen any good examples? And I'm thinking maybe more on the activation side or marketing sort of side, where you're seeing a great use of immersive, perhaps mixed with, a broader campaign or traditional media.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been loads. So I suppose to answer the question just from a theoretical point of view before getting into anything specific, when it comes to physical activations, there's a really interesting interplay between what we do versus what brands would traditionally do in the real world in terms of brand activation. So what we generally say is there's kind of two ways that we can complement what's happening, or what immersive media can do to complement real world traditional activations. One is to enhance the physical experience, right? So if you're doing some kind of a pop-up, let's say, then an immersive booth or virtual reality headsets can enhance that visitor experience, can attract more people in, and then give them an experience they can't have in the real world. So you suddenly, through the headset, you can transport them anywhere, you can show them anything, and you've absolutely captured their attention for however many minutes they're in the headset.
Yeah.
So from a marketer's point of view, that's an absolute dream, right? That's exactly what you want. It gives you the perfect medium to land some messages and get people to take it off and go, wow, you got to try this, right?
Yeah.
So that's route one. The alternative route is taking the physical and turning it into something digital, something that can live online. So if you are investing in a real world activation, whatever it may be, that's an expense and it lives for a limited amount of time in a limited location. If you can capture that experience, right, and put it online, then you can make it available to an infinitely wider audience who could be anywhere at any time for any length of time. So I'll give you an example. So we worked with Space NK, the cosmetics brand. They were doing a pop-up in Covent Garden in collaboration with another brand. And it was only going to be there for 2 weeks. Cost a lot of money to set up. What we did is basically went in, shot it, created a kind of digital twin of that pop-up, and then included all the various interactive elements that were there in the real world in an online version. So they could publish it to the website, and then anyone in the world could look at it, and it could then live on the web for 6-12 months at zero additional cost. So for a very small additional spend, they were able to take something they did in the real world and amplify it to a much larger audience. So that's where it kind of gets exciting as well.
And some of your delivery there might be that experience. It doesn't require a headset, does it? It could be like a click and point sort of like web interface where you explore different things on a conventional screen.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the traditional delivery mechanism, VR is one. Immersive booths or immersive screens are another one that we've talked about, and the web is another. At least half of what we do is consumable on the internet on any device, desktop, mobile. So we're working with a big automotive brand. I can't say who it is right now, but a big automotive brand to create an online showcase of their electric vehicle manufacturing. So really demystify the process of EV manufacture, to talk about some of the incredible technology that goes into it, the human ingenuity that goes into it. And so we can create 360 immersive content, so 360 video in this case, to show all of those real world environments that most people don't have access to, and then create quite a game-like experience where you as a user can navigate under your own control. You can explore embedded content depending on where your interests lie, and you can even play little games within it. So we can bring together real world footage, 3D animations, voiceover audio, interview videos, and really make something that's quite rich and interactive and can be consumed on any device. So yeah, you don't need any special hardware.
If you had to boil down these different, there's great examples, love them. They sound incredibly creative, very immersive. If you had to boil down the categories of the business benefit for immersive, I don't know if it's possible to even do this, but listening to you, brand experience immersion would be one. The transportation costs, saving on that piece, the server farm sort of example perhaps there, or training. Are there any other main sort of categories where you see, from a business objective sense, that immersive is really aligned to?
Yeah. So I think that probably the textbook answer to that question would be there's three things: impact, scale, and cost. So impact, there's loads of evidence for the emotional and recall impact of being immersed in media rather than watching it passively. So, so we're all about talking about how, kind of flat, passive, linear media is a bit passé. We think things that are interactive and immersive, three-dimensional are more exciting, and the evidence supports it. So people will generally be attracted to that content at a greater rate. They'll spend longer with it. They'll report enjoying it more, and they will remember it for longer. So just by virtue of giving people a different type of experience that they feel more part of, you're delivering a greater impact. And you can just watch their faces, right? People take off even really simple VR experiences. They take their heads off and go, wow, that was incredible. We think, oh, okay, we can do way better than that. But even simple things are still really impactful because it's not so familiar to most people. So that's number one. But then
sorry to interrupt. It's often getting them just to put the headsets on in the first place, isn't it? That's almost the biggest barrier often to some of this. So
exactly.
So that's number one. And
so that's impact. Scale we've talked about a bit, both in terms of the training program, but also the like the digital twin thing. So making content available to a greater audience at very limited additional cost. So there's that, and then cost. So being able to do things virtually is usually an awful lot cheaper than doing them in the real world, and certainly if you want to repeat it. But those are really the benefits that we trade off.
Yeah, great. Who do you typically work with? And I'm thinking here on the client side, who would you be working with in terms of the definer of the brief, if there is one? Often it sounds like there isn't a detailed one, but both in terms of like the implementation piece and who you sell to in an organization. What are some of the roles there?
Yeah, so there's been a really interesting shift in this, and it's related to what we were talking about earlier with regard to immersive finding its feet and finding its use cases. So back in the day, it used to be almost exclusively marketing departments. So it was, we want to create a piece of content that's a bit cool in some way. And it might be for the web, it might be for VR, whatever it may be. We want to give people a bit of excitement, a bit of experience they'll remember. They weren't too interested in metrics. It was all about just doing something cool and memorable that was going to get some column inches and so on. So that was where it came from. And that still is a large part of it. But over recent years, as increasing use cases have become public, companies are finding uses, and it's become more of a digital transformation solution. So that's where the learning and development, training, onboarding comes into it. And so we're now finding actually it's not just marketing departments, it's also human resources departments, innovation departments who are looking for a technical partner who can help them leverage this new technology in a way that they just don't have the resources or the skills in-house to do.
Okay. And how do you find clients? So it sounds like you are lucky enough to get some inbound inquiries, but do you do BD? How do you reach out and find people?
Yeah. So this is something that me and the growth team spend an awful lot of time thinking about. And yes, you're right. We're fortunate that the vast majority of our projects are inbound. So we get inquiries literally every day as I said, a varying degree of detail in the brief, usually not much, which is fun. But yeah, we also aware that it works for us to make sure the market is aware of what's possible, because most people still are not reading the blogs that we're reading. So our approach is generally about networking, events, taking speaking opportunities as much as possible to really just get the word out there and talk about what's possible. It doesn't even have to be our work. It doesn't really matter who's made it. It's just about getting people excited about the possibilities. So that's really what we do. We don't do any outbound sales at all.
Okay. Let's switch topic a little bit to you running the business. How does that look like? Let's just talk about running the business. How do you run it? Is it you doing it solo with the team? Is it you and a partner? What does that look like?
Yeah. So in terms of the commercial side of things, I work with our growth team. So there's 4 of us in the growth team. We meet every week, and we will do all of that strategic development, all of that planning, all that content creation, all that marketing. And that's really what we do. That's kind of how I spend half my time, and the other half is on the creative side, is really delivering projects for clients, and they're both exciting for different reasons. So, yes, it's my business, but we very much run it as a team.
Yeah. When you look at your demand, what does that look like at the moment? Are you seeing a steady growth? Have there been any big years, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so the two interesting trends that we've seen in particular in the last 24 months, one is average project value. So average project value has more or less doubled in the last 24 months, which is great, which shows that brands are willing to invest more and to push a bit further than they might before. The other one is VR. So we've seen a huge increase in inquiries for VR solutions. I think that's just the familiarity thing, just that the current generation of marketing human resources professionals are at least familiar enough to feel comfortable with that technology. And now they're thinking, what can I do with it? Whereas before it was just felt very alien. So there's been a huge uptick in VR inquiries.
That's exciting. Where do you want to take the business in the next couple of years?
There's so much to go. I mean, we're spoiled for choice, right? That's sort of one of our problems, and it's a quality problem. We have this conversation all the time, so we're always torn between um, the sort of what's fun and creative and what's commercial. So what's fun and creative is stuff like the penguins, it's the immersive installations. We're doing a project at the moment with a charity that's all about creating a VR meditation app. So this is going to be one of our first B2C offerings, where we'll be releasing an app on the MetaQuest store. And it's been really fun to create all these crazy 3D environments and an app that we can kind of launch into the world. So those are really fun to do, and everyone is completely different. Versus the commercial desire to create something that is solutions focused, that's bigger budget, that can be more like a product that you can then kind of roll out and reskin. And that's where the training comes in. So we like to keep a mix of both, because I like to think that one cross pollinates with the other and keeps us fresh. We don't really want to, we've never just done one thing. We've always been, as I say, a studio that has a toolkit in this immersive space. And so, we'll continue to go where the demand is.
What are some of the challenges? And I'm thinking here in terms of, because the delivery side, I guess it might be getting easier as technology improves, but some of it sounds complicated. You got equipment costs, resolution of cameras, a lot of cameras, processing, a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it, and complexity. Is there a tension between work and the ability to deliver it? Is there too much demand for your capacity to output?
Yeah, so we've got an interesting solution to that, and that's always been the case. Whenever you're in an innovation space, the technology is moving on very fast. So, capital investments can go stale very quickly. Demand can move on, and you can find yourself quite vulnerable. So our approach from the beginning has been to have a core team of specialists who are really passionate about this particular medium and the storytelling potential that it offers, while being agnostic about the specific tools that are used. Outside of that core team, we have what we call our Halo team, which is essentially a network, a pool of specialists that we can draw down from orbit depending on the needs of individual projects. So it's not uncommon, for example, if we're working on a brief, that we'll have a mixed bag of some in-house core team members and some specialists that we'll incorporate into the team, and we'll operate just as part of that team for the duration of that project. And what that means is that we can expand that pool to meet the capacity demands, and we can move the direction of that pool according to where the technology demands are. So that's allowed us to be quite nimble over the years.
How is AI impacting the business? I mean, clearly there's the big mega trend, the big technology trend. You alluded to earlier, actually, with the smart glasses. But in terms of things like delivery, is that helpful or too early to say? Or
yeah, I mean, yes to both. Yeah, it's helpful for delivery, and yes, it's too early to really say. So yes, we like any technology agency use AI for a number of things. It's really helpful in sort of concept visualization, that sort of thing, rapid prototyping and so on. We don't use it too much in final deliverables at the moment. There's some clients are nervous about IP questions, some just as a point of principle, but it is obviously a great productivity booster. I think what's going to be interesting is how the consumer market evolves with regard to its appetite for AI, because as quickly as it's been this incredible panacea, this exciting revolution, and we've seen various revolutions come and go and fizzle, as quickly as it's been that, I don't know about you, but I've really noticed the volume of AI content in my feeds has exploded, and I don't necessarily welcome it. And I'm probably someone who would be erring on the side of welcoming it. So there's going to be a really interesting dynamic now about whether there's a pushback against what's being called AI slop, and an appetite for authentic, real production. That'll be interesting. But to really answer your question, what AI is doing is picking off the lowest common denominators, picking off the lower end, lower quality, easier to produce content. And that's never been where we've operated. We've always operated at very much bespoke, pushing the boundaries of quality. And I think like any creative industry, there's always going to be an appetite for brands who want to spend the money to do something really special that's going to stand out and not just aim for the average.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was thinking this the other day, and I agree with you about the feed. It's just become so easy to just generate content, and that's actually, you can already see the kickback. On my Instagram, it's just full of AI generated stuff, and there's a certain novelty to it, but I think people are already getting fatigued by it. And I think you're right. I think for those companies that are actually putting some real thought, effort into it, it's authentic, it's really well thought through, really matches, it's really aligned to the specific needs of their business and what they're trying to achieve. And the production level is above, the AI slop. Actually, you're probably going to be in a pretty good situation there to continue to differentiate and, go for that very high quality bar.
Yeah, it's another tool in the toolkit, right? It's as I said before, we've always been agnostic about tools and had a broad set of them. So this is just another one. So yeah, I think in general we welcome it.
Great. Well, we're going to do a 180 now, and we're going to wrap up with leadership. Now, I know you've been looking forward to this question. Actually, I'm going to keep you on your toes. Actually, I'm going to throw in a quick supplemental one, which is, and again, I ask a lot of people this. How many people I forgot to ask you, how many people are in your agency?
So we actually just had our summer party the other week, and there were 18 of us there, which is great. So I think that's what we would consider our kind of core family. But then outside of that, probably double again in terms of our Halo team.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty sizable team. How do you think your leadership? Just to remind me, how many years have you been going with Circus now?
15.
That's quite a long time, isn't it? And if you don't mind me saying, you don't look that old either. So, how do you think your leadership has changed in that period? If you look back, and maybe there were just a couple of you 15 years ago, and here you are with 18 plus your Halo team. All this experience later, all these different scenarios, client scenarios, all of that experience. So how do you think it's impacted and changed you as a leader?
That's almost a question that you should ask the team, and I'd be a bit worried about what they might say. But I think the main part of the answer, and I'm sure there's lots of it, and a lot of it that's invisible to me, but is about devolution. So it started out being just me, and I really like getting involved in it. I like getting my hands dirty and doing the work. That's why I still spend an awful lot of my time working on client projects, because I love it. And so that's meant a challenge for me in terms of disentangling myself from being involved in everything and micromanaging. And so I think it's probably been a story of gradually devolving responsibility to other people. And we're grateful. I'm lucky to have an incredible team. And everybody's been with the business for a huge amount of time. In the just in the last few months, we've celebrated an 8th anniversary, a 10th anniversary, 7th anniversary. So within kind of core team members. So the team join, they stay. Hopefully, they find something that they like, and in so doing, I get to kind of share that responsibility and that growth with them, and we get to do something that feels like we're doing it all together.
Yeah. Quite often, business owners and leaders, they find it sometimes a struggle to delegate. Sometimes because they've done every job in the business, or they've got a very high perfectionism standard, a whole bunch of reasons why that might happen. How have you found that journey in terms of needing and having to delegate?
Yeah, I mean, uncomfortable if I'm honest, but it's really good now that I've been able to do that, and that's been something I've been working on in myself as much as anything, as well as I say, having this incredible team who I've worked with for many years. So those two things have really come together, and now I think we are on a much better and more balanced track than we've ever been.
Yeah, great. Final question. Tell me about a leader, or somebody, doesn't need to be a leader actually, anybody that's had a really positive impact and influence on your professional career.
Yeah, so let's say I just struggle a bit to think of a good answer for this. I'm not entirely sure I have one, but the thing that bubbled up in my mind was actually an academic psychologist who you may have come across, who I remember studying when I studied psychology at university, who really changed the way that I thought about human behavior. And I've gone back and reread his book several times since. There's Daniel Kahneman, who's written several books, lots of papers, but one of them is called Thinking Fast and Slow. That's sort of his best known work.
Yeah.
But I think just in terms of having, where we started our conversation, studying psychology, bringing that into the art of brand storytelling, has been a really interesting process. And I think his insights into the biases that we hold as human beings has been just fascinating. And every time I read the book, I find new things that I'd forgotten in it. So yeah, I think as a kind of academic inspiration, I'd probably pick him.
Great example. I often think that psychology and doing a psychology degree was could help, such a great bedrock to understand human behavior, especially when you're talking about communications, nudge behavior, or all of those different aspects of what you do. Fantastic. Jay, thank you so much for your time. That's been super interesting. I would guess that on your website, you've got a few, I know we don't always get the full experience on the web, but I guess you've got some nice examples on there. So we'll put a link to Jay's company's website for you the listeners to go and have a look at. Best of luck with the future. You're in a really interesting spot, really fast moving spot. And thanks for spending time with us, Jay.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for having me.